Well, thank you, Jason, for that very generous introduction. I must tell you that speaking with you all this evening is a unique experience for me on several counts. First, I think it's the first time when I've had to pay to give a speech rather than vice versa. Second, I've never before spoken about outdoors education, much less science. Third, as one who received a D in freshman calculus in college, I am completely unqualified to talk about anything having to do with math and science. And fourth, as Secretary of Defense, I probably had the distinction of being sued by more environmental groups than ExxonMobil or BP. And Stephen asked me to do this. For all those reasons, I hesitated. But for once, I came under enormous domestic pressure. So thanks to Becky, here I am. She is an ardent and totally committed advocate for NatureBridge and truly enjoys being on the board. I do not come from a family of outdoors men or women. I am confident that my mother, in her 99 plus years of life, never spent a night in a tent. And my father only did so when my brothers and my Boy Scout troop had an annual father and son camp out. I think he and the other dads played cards all night so they didn't have to sleep on the ground. My father never hunted or fished, except when he was hunting for a golf ball in the rough, or was fishing for one in a water obstacle on the course, and his hiking was limited to 18 holes. Still, they both loved nature and to travel. They owned a small cabin in the Rocky Mountains west of Colorado Springs, to which we would flee to escape Kansas summers. And there, as a very young child, I first experienced the high mountains and pine and aspen trees without number. At age 8, I spent 6 weeks at a boys' wilderness camp near Crested Butte, Colorado. Now it's a fancy ski resort. In 1951, Crested Butte was a ghost town in a valley dotted with beaver ponds, teeming with trout, just waiting for a boy and a fly rod, using flies he'd been taught to tie himself. It was high back country, and more than 60 years ago, there were no town lights to dim the spectacular night sky. But my love affair with the outdoors really began as a Boy Scout. I remember campouts in Kansas, learning to cook on a fire of dried cow chips, imparting a special taste to already inedible. I vividly remember one snowy January campout when we discovered some oil bubbling to the surface in a nearby field. Thinking this offered a quick solution to the problem of wet firewood, we collected about a gallon of the goo and poured it on our struggling fire. It really blazed. And then we learned a practical lesson in chemistry. The crude oil burned at a significantly lower temperature than the water vaporized. When the crude burned off, the water in the mix doused our fire for good. Through Boy Scouts, I spent parts of 2 summers hiking at Philmont Scout Ranch in New Mexico, 250,000 acres of desert and high mountains, with some of the most spectacular scenery I had ever seen. I served on the staff of camps in the Collegiate Mountains of Colorado and near Gunnison. Those were idyllic summers for me, especially as I stood atop more than one 14,000-foot peak we had climbed and surveyed the world. At the College of William and Mary in Virginia, I was doing my undergraduate work as an assistant scoutmaster. I was able to continue camping and canoeing. Of course, both were different back east. Coming from Kansas, I'd never heard of a tidal river. And so we woke up in the middle of one night during a multi-day canoeing trip down the Chickahominy River to find the river flowing through the bottom half of a sleeping bag. When we had pitched camp, we had no idea the inviting beach campsite would a few hours later be underwater. I first visited Olympic National Park in the early 1970s. And Becky and I came out from Virginia to visit her parents and swim for the Christmas holidays. From Hurricane Ridge to Lake Crescent, I had never seen such natural beauty. For the next 20 years, we would often visit and vacation and swim in Port Angeles. And visits to Hurricane Ridge and Rialto Beach, the rainforest, and more became annual pilgrimage. Family rights. And with my brother-in-law, Craig Wilkie, who's here this evening, summer after summer out here, I would backpack in the Olympics and the Cascades. One summer hiking up the Elwha, another crossing the Olympics into Lake Quinault. These hikes were a little awkward at times in that we were accompanied not only by our sons, but by my CIA security details. They carried Glock 9mm pistols. And I always told the new guys in the trailhead that in years of backpacking up here, I had never encountered a bear. But if we did, they should keep those pistols in their packs, because hitting a bear with one of those little bullets would just make him mad. And I was sure I could run faster than they could. As I told a high school class in Mount Vernon a few weeks ago, Becky and I were fortunate in that when I retired as CI director in 1993, my first field retirement, we had the freedom to live anywhere in America if we wanted. We chose the Skagit Valley and the Puget Sound area, a decision we have never regretted. My love of the outdoors, of nature, began as a child and was nurtured as an adolescent. And I think that's true of most people. And therein is the first problem facing NatureBridge, Boy Scouts, and other organizations seeking to get young people interested in the wonders of our natural environment. It's getting harder and harder to get kids away from their electronics, off the sofa, and involved in outdoor activities. Speaking as an old curmudgeon, I could go on about the impact of those electronics on obesity, attention span, and the development of personal relationships. But complaining wouldn't affect the reality that just 22% of kids 6 to 12, 18% of those aged 13 to 17, and 13% of those 18 to 24 spend even one night camping. One night under the stars. Percentages that have been in steady decline for a number of years. Yet for those between 13 and 17 who do camp, 2/3 engage in other outdoor activities, including athletics. And for those who don't camp, that number is 28%. The difficulty of getting young people outside is also reflected in the demographics of those visiting in our national parks. In 1996, 1/3 of all visitors to the parks were in their 20s. Now it's 11%, and just 6% at Yellowstone. The average age of visitors to Rocky Mountain National Park is 46. It used to be the late 20s and early 30s. In short, getting parents and their children interested in nature and spending time outdoors is a growing challenge in this country. A second problem we all face is that this question of getting kids to the outdoors is especially severe among minorities. While 82% of those who camp are white, that percentage among Hispanics who camp plunges to 6%, among Asian Americans to 5%, and African Americans 4%. And these percentages roughly correlate to the ethnicity of visitors to our national parks. A third problem, especially for educational programs such as NatureBridge that seek to integrate the outdoor experience with science, is the well-documented decline in both interest and performance of American school children in math and science. This is partly due, I think, to the fact that too many science teachers in grades K through 12 are not sufficiently steeped in the subject to be able to make it interesting. 15 years ago, 93% of those teaching science in grades 5 through 8 did not have a major or certification in the subject. In grades 9 through 12, it was 67%. Those numbers have not improved significantly. Even 20 years ago, using international standards, fewer than a third of American students performed at or above a proficient level in math or science. A few years ago, the U.S. ranked 17th globally in the proportion of college-age students earning science and engineering degrees. Several decades ago, we ranked third. The importance, the value of a teacher who knows the subject well enough to make it relevant and interesting to students was driven home for me several years ago when I was president of Texas A&M. I thought it would be a great idea to have graduating seniors nominate a high school teacher who they believed had most contributed to their success in college, and to nominate them for an award that would be presented at the students' commencement at A&M. The high school teachers who were selected were part of the stage party at the commencement, recognized during the ceremonies, including the reading of the nominating letter. The teacher received a check for $2,000, and his or her high school received a check for $1,000, and the student committee made the choices. I'll never forget one recipient, a math teacher, whose nominating student described how that high school teacher had taken the math class on a field trip to a rural cell tower, knowing how addicted those high school students were to their cell phones. Once at the tower, he proceeded to teach them how math made their cell phones possible. And the result of the exercise was a remarkable increase in their interest and performance in math. All of a sudden, it was relevant to their lives. But if the teacher is not sufficiently knowledgeable, such connections, making math and science interesting, are tough to achieve. All of the challenges that I've described, getting kids outdoors, getting minority and disadvantaged kids into nature, making science interesting and fun, taken together, I believe, represent great opportunities for NatureBridge. Just think about it. Classroom after classroom with kids, coming from urban settings and often underprivileged families, never exposed to the spectacular beauty of Olympic National Park, bursting out of their buses at Lake Crescent for 3 days, 3 to 5 days of fun and learning, with enthusiastic and especially highly knowledgeable young instructors who lead activities, field trips, and experiments that both challenge and entertain. Education and learning successfully disguised as fun. Who knows how many young people's interest in both nature and science will be ignited during those few days. Each child is tender. Each instructor is the flint. Who knows how many fires of curiosity and excitement, of lifelong commitment might be lit. And even if only a few are motivated to pursue science in school or in a career, how many more will be motivated to return again and again to the mountains and the streams and the forests? This opportunity is why Becky and I believe so strongly in the mission of NatureBridge and its educational programs for young people. This opportunity is why NatureBridge deserves support from all of us. How better to get kids into a place of extraordinary national beauty and teach them about the environment, science, and perhaps most important, their responsibilities to the planet and to our country and its natural inheritance. On a personal note, I would also hope that the experience in Olympic National Park might have another kind of impact on children who participate. Over the last nearly 50 years, working for 8 presidents, I've had many stressful roles at CIA, the White House, and the Department of Defense. I've directed operations and wars and sent many men and women in harm's way. Too many of them paid the ultimate price for our country. But each summer, when I would return here to Puget Sound, to the mountains, my soul was refreshed, my energy restored. I found serenity and peace here. And I would hope that the NatureBridge children would find that as well in the quiet moments of their visits. So let me close with a quote from one of my favorite books, Of Men and Mountains, written in 1950 by native Washingtonian and Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas. Douglas wrote, "Use the mountains to prepare for adventure. Be inspired to search out the high alpine basins and fragile flowers that flourish there. Come to know the exhilaration of wind blowing on rocky pinnacles. Recognize the music of the conifers when it comes both in whispered melodies and in the fullness of the wind instruments. Discover the glory of a blade of grass and find a relationship to the universe in the song of the willow thrush at dusk. Learn to worship God where pointed spires of balsam fir turn Mount Meadow into a cathedral. Discovery is adventure." NatureBridge is the key for countless children to unlock for themselves the wonder of discovery and adventure in nature and in themselves. Thank you.